around here? Yes, there is. It was just stupid here. Okay. Apparently, sleeping in the middle of a desert, not the greatest thing. So, our temple is just over the ways here. And I thought I would take a bit today to talk a little bit about how dungeons are designed. So, yeah, there's there. Hasn't changed very much since the last episode, because I have not received, at least as yet, very many suggestions for rooms. So I thought I would spend an episode talking a bit about how to actually design them. So, consider this hill over here, which is actually quite conveniently located and designed. You've got this big, dark, foreboding circle in the side of it, and let's call that our entry. In the case of our particular dungeon, our entry is going to be through a big hole that I will drop the players in, and that will get them to here, mostly so that I can get a bit more, like, verticality, because we're very close to the surface, and we are also very close to an ocean, so getting underground quickly would be advisable. I don't actually want them to take any damage when they're doing that, so I'll probably have some vines or ladders or a water landing. Maybe it's like the bottom of a reservoir or something. So yeah, people will drop in, and now we then need to start considering what is going to happen to them. What kind of equipment are we expecting our particular adventurers to have on them? Now, for reference, for this I am largely referring to this book, which is Dungeonscape 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons edition. You can get that from Wizards of the Coast, or you can probably find it online, but I wouldn't know anything about that. So, obviously, we need a number of rooms that we'll call respites, and the first room here is going to be one such area. So, if we say that white stained clay here is a respite is a room that doesn't necessarily have no like frets inside of it, but has at least a few frets, or frets that are easily overcome. It's usually something like a puzzle room and the kind, and it's just a place where the adventurers can get their breath, take stock, figure out what they're going to do. If you're in a prolonged D&D campaign, quite probably it's the area where your PCs will go to sleep for a bit, because, you know, that makes perfect sense in the middle of a dungeon. So then we want to consider our players are probably fairly seasoned already. They probably have pretty decent armor and weapons. They're probably carrying a few potions, and potions are our big nemesis, because they turn the occasional tick of damage from fire into nothing, which is not achievable in D&D. So what we want to start off by doing is pulverizing them a little bit. So we'll start off with some traps, and let's indicate that with our brown stained clay here. These are all natural colors from a nearby mesa. So our heroes start off, and they've got, quite probably it'll be some kind of crushing trap. So they'll start and they'll go into this this long corridor, and what they'll experience is probably a fair few sticky pistons in the wall, pulsing in some kind of order. If I actually want to have any order, I can just make them be completely random. So we'll get through that. And then we can start to bring in more, we can bring in a bit more dynamism. So they get through there and they think, okay, we've gotten through that, what next? Well, we had our pulverizer to soften our players up. Now let's offer them a puzzle. Let's give them some kind of actual problem to solve, which will indicate with light grey here. From that puzzle, we can actually diverge. We can send them into different, like, two potentially different directions, maybe even 3 or even more. And I'm thinking we're going to do that, because that means that I can then give people multiple options when they're going through. It means I can change up the answer. I could even potentially make a puzzle that randomizes its own answer. So, down this way, we will soften our players even more with some lava. And down this way, we will give them our first touch, perhaps, of the kobolds. So down here is, shall we say, the original traps of the temple, because this temple has been disused and abandoned for many centuries, and has then the kobolds have taken up a residence. So they'll go through kobolds this way, and they'll go through lava traps and the other like here. And this is the direction that ultimately leads to an actual, like, tomb kind of position, which we will mark with a bit of sandstone. Seems the most fitting block to use for that. So, yeah, we'll say that's our tomb kind of location. Now, the kobolds are a completely different kind of story. Well, more or less. They inhabited the area, and then they just, they're still hanging around, because, hey, they like it here. We'll have some stuff over this way, and we really want to have the opportunity to completely mislead, as well as to have our players potentially cross back over into the crosshairs of the kobolds. So let's just dig ourselves out a little kind of plot around here, and quite possibly the kobolds will have gotten into the tomb as well, because they're going to want to have some reason to be in there. And once you get to here, I'll probably have like a piston slime block lift to get you back up, and that will be your exit, your terminus, as it were. There. Okay, so it is our issue now that we need to try and fill up this pattern. Obviously, I can expand this later on, I can make it more intricate in actual close detail, but we need to try and think of what kind of things to have around here. So if we say that the kobolds, which we will just, for the moment, indicate with this pure hardened clay, is entirely this web. Now, this indicates an area that the kobolds have perhaps repurposed parts of the original tomb for new things. So, for example, there might be some kind of display room that they're now manning with gunners on the balcony, or have indeed for the most part flooded with lava and other suchness. Or it might be that they've dug out a completely new tunnel. So we can have all manner of things there. We can have pitfalls, we can have actual, like, arrow traps, the likes of which we might recognize from the jungle temples, or they might have other things entirely. We also want to have some kind of area where we can classify it as being basically their actual den, the part where the kobolds all start out, get spawned, that kind of thing. Where they breed, where they sleep, where they eat, that kind of thing. Having that kind of nice touch to a dungeon really adds to it, I think. And then, on the other side, we have the tomb. And the tomb has one specific goal, and that is to keep people out. So it starts... it's going to be almost entirely at least, environmental issues. Because the tomb expects there to be nobody around. The tomb wants to make sure that anything that comes in here dies, ideally in the quickest, most painful manner possible, to dissuade anyone from actually coming to here. And I'm actually going to cut this off, I think, and so you actually have to go through both sides, but they can connect, so that seems like a better idea to me. Oop. Okay, so from down along here, we've got the lava trap initially, and then we can kind of expand that to include more crushing traps, to include pitfalls. Maybe we can include some other forms of damage, such as potion traps and the like. I think potion making is going to be changing in the near future, so we might have an issue making potions autonomically for that, but it's possible, especially if I get in a few witches or something and call them mummies, I don't know. But the trouble of having named mobs inside this is that it's very hard to replace them, or at least it's harder to replace than it is to get them. So that's something we need to bear in mind. I'm just going to stand over here tentatively because I see the sun going down. And we also want to have a few blind sides here, so directions that the players can go that will be completely the wrong way and the like, which maybe they'll be forced into by the actual, like, traps of the tomb. Maybe they'll wander into them thinking they're the correct way. Maybe they picked the wrong end out of a puzzle. Again, we can also use a randomizer on the puzzle to mix up which is the correct answer, so people who are coming through on repeat have no potential, like, idea of which way is the right way to go, except they might know how to solve the puzzle, depending on how I work that. Whoop. Now, the ultimate thing, of course, is that every dungeon has a finale. It has usually some kind of big, potent creature, and the most obvious one that I could try and do is I can, via means of dispensers and such, auto-spawn a wither. I don't want to do that inside this dungeon. I don't want to have anything that can explode or damage the terrain, because I can't put people into adventure mode. I can't put the game rule for mob griefing off, and I'm not even sure if that even affects the wither, so I can't really use a wither in this. So what this will most likely be, it'll be the culmination of both the tomb and the kobold lines. So at this point, the tomb is probably trying very hard to make sure you die. That makes sense. The deeper you go into it, the harder it tries to make sure you stop. But, on the other side, the kobolds, the deeper you go into here, the more into their homeland you're getting. So you're looking at an area which is getting deeper, riddled with more kobolds and more traps that they've laid out and more of their own little mining efforts. So that would mean... have I used red? No, I haven't. Okay, let me just indicate tomb side of things here. And one here. There we go. Okay. So, when you get to here, what you're looking at is both of these sides combining. So the kobolds want you dead, because you've passed through, like, all of their stuff, and they're, like, what's left of their nests is right behind you. Coming in through the door that you're probably heading through. The tomb, meanwhile, also has its own defenses, its own concerns, and its own means of, like, dealing with you. So, what you want to try and do then is combine both of these things. So you'll have lava traps, you'll have pitfalls and the like, and you'll have the arrow traps and the archers and the melee like dudes dealing with the kobolds. The kobolds, of course, also have actual traps as well. So, for example, there is something I've been working on in a creative test world, which is just a manned barricade behind which there is a zombie, and if that zombie is stood there, then ever so randomly, he will dump a bucket of lava temporarily in front of him. So you take a bunch of damage as well as get set on fire. And bearing in mind how many like inventory slots the player has, we have to be a little bit cautious. I'm actually going to have a little bit of a back point here. Let's grab that. Good. So that we can maybe give our players a respite if they want to hide in here for a temporary moment. But also we can make this a lot bigger, a lot more complicated when we're actually building it in situ, as it were. But once you get here, your big climactic battle is between both halves of this encounter, and maybe there's like a one-way route here, so you can't jump back up, but that's a little harder with jump potions and stuff without using just redstone for it. But yeah, so a capacity to also try and like separate the groups would be good as well. So maybe at one of these, if you don't pass through like quick enough, you get stuck, and you have to go backwards and whatnot, or try and go backwards and run through it again or something. That would be really cool, and that is not my doing, jeez. But yeah, so we want to just try and consider these options. So, how many times can I say so? Once again, oh dear. Right, let me grab some sticks and some lumber so I can make a couple of signs with which to indicate the kind of ideas I'm looking for on tumblr.com/tagged Dungeon Maker Lying. So, what we want are softener, and we want puzzles, and we want actual straight up doom. So we'll call these action. So you've got softeners, puzzlers, and action kind of rooms. Respites we can have be fairly straightforward. That's not too difficult. And more or less every room in this is going to be half slabs on the floor, so bear that in mind. And I'll try and work out an actual like decent block scheme, a color scheme, a kind of a pattern to be used for these different rooms. But don't worry about that just yet, because I'm only interested in functions. So get into your Minecraft worlds, get into your Minecraft test world in creative mode or whatever, and start designing some of these. And if I see them inside of Dungeon Maker Lying's tag, I will definitely do my best to include them. But I think that's about it for right now. I've evidently got a lot of space to clear out once I see your ideas, and I hope you've all enjoyed this additional visit to World of Madness server. And geez, I'm nearly talking for like a day and a half. Wow. And I will catch you all in the next episode of Dungeon Maker. See you in a bit.